Producing Music Podcast with Mark Dollar and Cooper Anderson.
So we did New Music Friday. I think it's time for the top five. Top five. And this week is the top 5 ways to increase the quality of your trap productions.
That's right, bro. It's going down. You know it. It's time. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. All right. Number 1, referencing other productions. Tell me about it.
Well, it's simple. There are some great songs out here, great trap songs that do have great productions. Frito, Bang, Usher, and Tiger. Although I didn't think that was like one of Usher's like really good, like best songs. But there's also Tiger. I love the Trippie Redd song. That was kind of cool. Like Flo Milli was okay. Still Remember with Gucci Mane. Like some of these songs were kind of cool. I like this Block Baby with Lil Loaded. That was okay. You know, that was those were actually good productions. We can listen to these productions and try to figure out what vocals or what, you know, what people like about it, what, you know, sounds good about it, what's infectious about it, and try to invite that more into our productions.
Yeah, absolutely. I love references for production and for mixing. Just kind of gives you a reference of, in production, I look for it for ideas and inspiration. You know, one of the main things I'll do is like try and find a similar record that's performing well, that's in a similar tempo, and then I'll, you know, grab drum beat ideas from that and stuff like that. Or, you know, just see how they put their arrangements together and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I like to listen to concept. You know, I like to figure out how an artist and producer tried to figure out, okay, how can we make this song sound cool? And then sometimes you're hearing those ideas come to life, like right in front of you. From the selection, again, of like your sample to the selection of the chords to the selection of the drum pattern and sounds. Those are all things that kind of you get to have a lot of control over. Even while we're trying to fit into a standard of songs, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't grab inspiration from not just trap, but any other song in general and try to invite that into a trap production.
Totally. All right, let's move to number 2.
Number 2 is don't get caught up in tutorials. I got a lot to say about this, Cooper, but I want you to start.
I mean, that's basically it. Don't get caught up in tutorials. Tutorials are super helpful. I do recommend checking them out, especially if you're just getting started. But the thing is, like, you know, it's like training wheels. Like, you're only going to go so far with a tutorial, and you can't take every tutorial as like, you know, this is the way and that's it. What I do for tutorials is I'll like learn little bits and pieces from this and that, and then I combine everything to make my own style.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I use tutorials in a very cautious way because you got to understand something. Just because you're watching a tutorial that even has something to do with your own genre does not mean that you have the same sonic capability or the same decisions that you have to make for the song that you're working on as opposed to the decisions that they've made for the song that they're working on. You know, you can't, I've never, there's this one Steven Slate ad that always comes up on Facebook, and it's with what the producer is. But I think it's like, I forget his name. But there's a dude that's watching it, and as he's doing it, he's like stopping the video and adding the same move. I'm just like, dude, like, of course, like, that's not how we should be taking these tutorials. Like, you shouldn't be mirroring a tutorial and performing the same moves. And we always get kind of blocked out in that. The key is you have to just have the end goal in mind. And when you have the end goal in mind, you could almost envision how much you need EQ wise, compression wise, effect wise, so on and so forth. So yeah, again, don't get roped up in this shit because, again, you might be like learning off a tutorial, and where the recording was already good. Like there was what's the Nirvana producer, Steve Albini, and he's doing a mixing tutorial on a tutorial site, and he pulls up the faders. I'm listening to it. I'm like, man, you don't even have to fucking touch this. Like, it already sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Like if you're like, they should have did the tutorial on how to record it that good.
Yeah.
You know, not on the mix, because there's nothing he's gonna do to this to make it sound bad unless he wanted to purposely
Yeah, you have to work hard
something.
to screw it up.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, that's a really big one. Just don't get roped in.
No doubt.
Number three,
let me read it. It's my turn.
go for it. Yes.
Number 3 is don't use too many plugins. What do you think about that?
You don't need too many plugins. It's just like, you know, you get like, the human mind works a certain way. And when you're mixing, those little plugins are like little issues that, for me, it's like they're little issues that I always have to feel like I gotta touch and just manipulate and stuff. And I feel like I'm doing so much stuff with it. But the truth is, there ain't shit happening. I could do way more with a channel strip plugin than I could with 5 plugins inside of a instance. Nah, I would just say, you know, try to limit the amount of plugins, because that way you'll know whether or not your production is actually where it needs to be. If I'm pulling up the CLA plugin and I'm adding tons of high end and I still don't feel like the high end is good enough, then I just haven't recorded it with enough high end, and I probably should think about re-recording it. What do you think, Cooper?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I'm just like printing everything that's that I'm like, you know, committed to basically, and you know, so all the plugins like Isotope RX and stuff like that, like the restorative stuff, which in a mix is when I get like, you know, less than ideally recorded, you know, not great sounding tracks in, and I have to bring them up to the bass level so that I can start my mix. So I'll print that once I get up to the bass level, and then I'm starting, and then I'm just using a few basic, you know, like a channel strip and auto tune and some reverb, and that's about it. You know, de-essers and whatnot. But yeah, so once I have it at that level, then I'll just use my standard, like, you know, 4 or 5 plugins at the most. But I'm using also, I'm using these plugins like very gently too. Like I'm hardly doing anything. So
yeah, I tend to go aggressive with the plugins, but I tend to like the plugins that allows me to stay subtle and also get really aggressive. I like to have kind of the best of both worlds there.
yeah, for sure.
But you know, you were saying last week, and I think this is a good point. When you create a template, and you know, we've been talking about templates these past few weeks, you're not even, if you're really in the mix, you're not even looking at half the plugins in your template. You're not even looking at 1/10 of them. You know, you're only working with like maybe 4 or 5 of them at a time to like kind of do the 80-20 work in the mix. So it's like, I think once you kind of get a good template, you're not thinking about plugins nearly as much. You're just thinking about how you can get the mix to work as best as possible.
Yeah, no, for sure.
All right. Number 4 is have realistic goals. What do you think?
Yeah, that goes back to the same thing of, you know, if, you know, a good recording versus a bad recording. If you have a bad recording, you have to be realistic about what it's really going to sound like. you can't compare yourself to Drake, who recorded it on a $20,000 microphone with $50,000 of front end before it even hit Pro Tools, and then it was mixed on a giant whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're not on that level, so you got to compare yourself to like stuff that was recorded the same way, and so you just got to be realistic about it. And it's like it's the same thing. If you're a hobbyist downloading beats off YouTube and you're recording on your iPhone or your Scarlett or bass level whatever, the likelihood of it actually like performing well commercially isn't very high, so you shouldn't expect that.
There's a lot of people that don't think that there are changes in the sound and the conversion off of those types of kind of elements and tools that we use, when I 100% agree with it. And like, for instance, just how even just, adding, a preamp that Cooper has lent me, an Avalon 737, and a microphone, a U87, it's already a different world of intelligibility. There is a big difference. And I think one thing that a lot of people don't think about, if you're actually trying to get to that level, if you're a hobbyist, you probably shouldn't even be listening to this podcast, because I've probably pissed you off more times than not. But with that being said, if you're actually trying to get to a level, then you need to realize that you gotta fight fire with fire. And if you're using crappy equipment, then yeah, you're going to have to, like you just said, you're gonna have to spend time getting the production to a base level. And then from there, you can be able to be creative. But I actually find that that's one of the things that makes it hard for me to mix some records, because once you hear a song, it's like, holy cow, this can be really good, but you got to see through all the mud, you got to find, what's good through all of this. And that sometimes is really hard when you're not recording on great platforms and such.
Yeah, so that brings us to number 5, the fifth and final way to increase the quality of your trap productions. I think this isn't even like specific to trap. This is kind of almost general to pretty much any genre. But anyway, number 5 is work with producers. Tell me about it.
For me, when I work with a lot of artists, they have their ways of doing things. I was the same way. When I came up, I thought that I was supposed to like track things a certain way and do this a certain way. And, for instance, as musicians, we all have that common thing of we want to nail the perfect take, because that's what the things that we talk about the most coming from the studio. Oh yeah, I nailed that take in one shot. That was, that's the stories we want to tell when we recorded that record, However, in reality, that's not always at your disposal. That's not always accessible. That's not always convenient. To be able to, know how to collaborate with the producer in order to get the best ideas, period. Just to have a second opinion will do your record way better than if you just sat in your room and just did, everything yourself. Or if you're working with a band or whatever the case is, I'm not sure. But yeah, working with producers, we really know, or at least the ones that have the most experience, they have, years of it. They know what sounds good, what sounds bad. They know what sounds hot, and they'll be able to get you there faster.
Yeah, I think it goes to like, in general in the industry, you find a lot of people have like overinflated egos. So like people get bent out of shape, like, over like stuff that's, it just doesn't make sense. So one thing I learned from one of my mentors, Captain K, was if someone asks you to do something, just do that. Don't be like, oh, I can mix it too. Oh, I can master it too. If they just asked you to record a vocal, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you work your way up. And if you develop a rapport and then you're also doing hot productions, yeah, maybe they'll have you produce something later. You're doing hot
Yeah.
mixes, maybe they'll have you mix something later. But don't get bent out of shape because they're not coming to you for everything. Because, like, this is a business, and the goal of any business is to solve problems. So
Exactly.
don't solve a problem that doesn't exist. Like, maybe this person is already mixing with someone else who's like on a higher level than you. That's
Yeah.
okay. You know, if the gig makes sense for you, then take the gig, you know, and if they're like wondering, oh, where can I get this mix? Then yeah, you can pitch your services then. But like, don't
Yeah,
be like,
exactly.
oh yeah, I need to mix it. And then what I see a lot of people do is they'll withhold files. They're like, no, I'm gonna
Yeah.
mix it, or they'll get bent out of shape when people ask for changes. Like, it's their record. It's not your record. Like, just do what they want. You already put your imprint on it. If they're keeping elements, great.
Yeah.
If they don't keep any of it, at least you got paid. If you didn't get paid, that's because you negotiated yourself out of payment up front.
Yeah.
So, just do what they want, or, walk away if it doesn't work for you anymore. It's my advice.
Yeah. I totally believe that we as producers, we have to know how to service our clients just as much. But I also do feel like artists also need to know that, a producer, the job of being a producer is way more involved than just making a beat. It has a lot to do with the overall sound of your record. Not that you just have great samples, not that you just know how to put together a beat. I know a lot of guys that know how to put together beats really well. But when
Mm-hmm.
you actually put it in the scheme of being a record, it's far from it. So you have to really know, again, the elements of what you're using. And a lot of times there are producers who know how to get there very fast. You should also do your research on the producers and figure out if they're the right production style for you. You might have a production style then where you need a certain type of producer to just come to your house and hang with you for a few hours and shoot the shit with you, and then all of a sudden you got that hot 15 minutes, and then you guys go into the production, to the studio and record whatever you need to record. That is, some people, that's the way they do it. Some people, they gotta have it in a certain type of way, and this, that, and the other. Every producer is different, just like you're different for every artist. So to find someone that's in the same vibe and can understand how you like to record, as well as you being open to recording in a very open way, yeah, we can really allow ourselves to just have fun and make the best records that we can.
Yeah, that kind of leads into our listener question of the week, too. I mean, you pretty much just answered it, but that's why is mixing / engineering / production?
That's a really good question. I think if you ask me, it comes down to listening environment. It comes down to your knowledge of, and this is something I kind of coined myself. I don't know if I really coined it, but I'm saying I coined it. I'm gonna be a savage right now and say I coined it.
You're coining it.
But I'm coining it. But you have to have knowledge of your sonic set. To me, a good producer knows how to say or take a concept. Like, for instance, there was a song this week on this week's playlist that had urban trap drums that had a lot of reverb on them, but basically all the instruments were like 1960s style instruments. So you could tell that was a conversation. You can immediately tell that someone said, yeah, I want to take this trap production and kind of put like this 1960s style vibe on it. which to me is a great concept. But a good producer is somebody that knows, yes, like I know how to do this with some sort of skill or some sort of knowledge. And every producer is different. Like, your idea of 1960s sounds might be way different than my idea of 1960s sounds. Like, for instance, some people might think of the 1960s to be Jimi Hendrix and Phase and stuff like that, where some people might think 1960s and think the Stax sound, you know? So it's our ability to be able to call up on some of those sounds. It's also our ability to be able to call up some of our, just our knowledge of producing. You know, like, techniques are different. How I might start with the kick drum might be a lot different than how you start with the kick drum. Some dudes like to just throw limiters on kick drums and just call it a day. Whereas I'll sit there and I'll try to take out some frequencies. I'll add a little compression. I might add some saturation. Everybody's different, you know, and I think it all comes down to workflow. That's another big thing. Like, I found that, you know, some of my favorite producers in the world, they have a workflow that gets them up to a point where they have a good song, no matter what they have done to the song, no matter how much time they spent working on the song, no matter how much time they spent not working on the song. They always have a workflow that gets them there. If your workflow is that you just record the song and then you mix it, then you're going to have a very different result than somebody who's done pre-pro production, went to the producer to talk to about the song, went to the right studio, found the right studio for the record, so on and so forth, and recorded with the right mics and the right context and stuff like that. You're going to have a very different time working on that record versus working on a record in which you just literally put the sounds together real quick. And the arrangement of that record might be way different than that other record. So it's like, how do you mix those songs? Again, it comes down to workflow. That I took that a lot, but for me, it's all about workflow for sure. Like, I don't do any editing when I mix. And I actually have an extra fee for if I have to do editing in the mix. And I always tell my clients that I don't like to edit when I mix because it takes me out of my creative space. You're calling me to be creative, not to fix your production. So if you want me to do that, you're going to have to pay me to do that first, and then I'll mix your record. Some people would just take it all and just edit it all themselves. Some mix engineers like to take the idea of, adding chops and stuff into their mixes to signify that their mix is done. Whereas me, it's like, all right, I just want the mix to sound good. Artists feel that way too. When I used to mix for hip hop clients, they would say that they would feel like the mix isn't done because I haven't added chops to it. And again, that also comes down to I'm not producing when I'm mixing. So, everybody has a workflow. That might be way different than what you do.
Yeah, and it's, you got to find a situation that you like that works for you to get the right vibe, and that'll get the best performance, I think, for me, is kind of the answer to that question in the production sense. And then the engineering sense, I think, it's like when someone comes to you and is like, okay, make this mix ready for Spotify. What does that even mean? We don't know.
Yeah.
Listen to Spotify, mixes sound like all over the board. It's very different.
Yeah.
So, 100%. For me, if someone says that, I just need a little more information. I just, I go by, or if they don't even provide it, I'll just kind of fill in the blanks myself a little bit and find similar commercially successful records in the same genre and just use those as my reference. You know, I'll usually tell them if I'm doing that because, you know, people, you know, especially at the entry level, just haven't really been asked that question. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm unique. It's like, yeah, okay, but what's your goal here? To be unique, or are you trying to sell records? Because if you're trying to sell records, like it's like unique but the same. You have to fit the formula. And you can be unique within the formula. And a lot of the people who are starting just don't realize what the formula is, basically.
Yeah. Every genre has a formula. Every genre. And every genre has a modern formula as well. And it's up to you as a producer to know that or to unlearn that for the production that you're working on.
Yeah.
And you also have to know that. You have to know, okay, I'm like I said the other week, you know, if I get a band that says to me, we want a really tight sounding rock record, then that already means that I got to track that record a whole lot different than I would if I was playing like a really loose style R&B song.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole different production style for me.
Yeah.
Like I would not produce those songs the same way, and that's obviously a given. But at the same time, you know, if I was comparing rock record to rock record, it would be vastly different as well. You just have to know how you are going to bring the best out of the production. I think there are producers that I love that their involvement as per every single song kind of goes in and out. You know, a guy like Timberland could be the executive producer on a song and just help with the drum programming on the next. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's about sometimes knowing as a producer how to help this production. Not just, okay, I'm going to make a production, but how do I help it? The artist might already have a good idea. They might already have great sounds. They may already have good recordings. So it's like, okay, what do you do to make that better? You know?
Yeah, for real. Cool. So on that note, I think we're gonna call it for the week. So check us out next week on producingmusicpodcast.com, featuring God River Audio from thisisaudio.co and Cooper Anderson from cooperanderson.net. Check out our free sample packs at freeproducersamples.com and
$sample pack, yeah.
.com. Did I forget any? We have too many websites. We just got to consolidate this. I don't know. Just check us out.
Well, yeah, just check us out. We got a lot of things going on.
Links are in the bio anyway.
And we're also always available for production and engineering.
Consultations,
musicianship, you know.
I pretty much live on Zoom these days, so I can zoom in. You know, we're on the internet.
Yes. So don't ever be afraid to hit us up.
For real. All right. And we are